Did you miss us? Long weekend here as we go from Thursday to Tuesday. Just an extra day, but it felt like we were away for a long time. Hope everybody had a great Memorial Day weekend filled with hot dogs and hamburgers. What'd you guys eat? Hot dogs and hamburgers?
Chicken tenders and pizza.
Okay, that's not bad. Dave?
I had a steak on Saturday that was really good.
It does sound good. Okay. I had a cheeseburger yesterday. I will probably make some hot dogs and ribs tonight. It just got postponed today. But anyway, welcome back. Today we're going to look at groups of three. We're going to look at three players, for example, Drake London, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill. I looked at our most recent draft and took three running backs, wide receivers, or quarterbacks who were drafted almost back-to-back. And we're going to talk about who has the most upside. But before we get into that, Jamie, is that the only thing that matters? What percentage of your evaluation is upside when you're making a pick? Does it matter at what point in the draft you are? Let's just talk about upside because it's not necessarily the be-all, end-all, but it is very important.
I heard Dan Schneider say this recently, and a lot of people draft this way. You're either going to be first or last. So if you're not going in with the idea of the team that you're building initially is to only win the league, as opposed to get yourself to the playoffs and see what happens. There's just a mindset, I think, of how people approach, going into the season, so like you're building the team with the most upside, so you're trying to leave your draft with, if this guy hits, he's going to do this. If this guy hits, he's going to do that, and we have this conversation a lot. I know you feel this way, Adam, like when you're drafting one of these mid-round receivers, you talk about this a lot, that you want him to be a top 10 player, for example, right? Not necessarily just somebody who's going to be drafted as a 20th receiver to finish as a 20th receiver. You're drafting him with the idea of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but with the idea that he's got top 10 upside, right?
Well, look, I don't think you want to draft a player as wide receiver 25 or something if he doesn't have any chance or any realistic chance of being a top 12 receiver. It's not, you at least want to give yourself that chance to hit a home run.
Right. It's, the floor versus the ceiling conversation. So I think with the idea of your roster build, like, I always like to try to have a little bit of a mix, like I'm going to, clearly trend toward the player with the most upside. But in the case of, I saw the list that you sent us. There's a couple situations where that player has so much downside that it might outweigh the upside, for example.
Sure.
So Tyreek Hill is somebody that I know we're going to discuss, so the upside is clear. We've seen it in 2 of the 3 years in Miami, but the third year that he's coming off of was awful, and he's older and, has a lot of, flaws potentially versus what the upside could be. So he's someone, when you're debating one of these high-end wide receiver 2s, because that's where he's now living, it's a little bit concerning for someone like him, for example, where the upside is clearly there, but also the downside, I think, is worse.
Okay. Dave, you want to weigh in, or should we just get on with the show?
Let's get on with it.
All right. Some quick news and notes here. According to Jeremy Fowler of ESPN, Kirk Cousins would be on Pittsburgh's radar if they can't sign Aaron Rodgers. We should know pretty soon about Aaron Rodgers. It still looks like Pittsburgh's a strong possibility.
He's still dropping hints. He mentioned that there's a certain team that plays at Chicago in 2025 that he could sign with, and I'm sure he was mentioning the Steelers.
So unless
no to New Orleans.
He did say no to New Orleans,
unless Louisiana.
Unless I'm missing something. The biggest news of the last few days to me is what Javonte Williams said. Because remember, like I said with Chris Godwin, it took Chris Godwin 2 seasons to get back to normal from his knee injury. Javonte tore his ACL, his LCL, and something called his posterior lateral corner in 2022. He says he's finally back to feeling fully healthy. He says he could still be a little bit more flexible, but Javonte Williams says he feels completely like himself. So as I personally was really excited about the Jaden Blue draft pick, I think Javonte, if maybe it just took him a long time. And he said everybody's recovery is different. This was on Cowboys.com. He could be a sleeper, even though he's not going like super late. If he's a round 8 pick, he could be a sleeper, I think, Javonte, if he's healthy.
He won't go in round 8 if there's buzz about him in training camp. He'll be a round 5 pick if that happens. But it's got no. If it looks like he's old school Javonte Williams and everybody's excited that this guy could be drafted as a middle to low end RB2 and ends up being top 15 because you could have as the every touch back in Dallas, you're going to see him rise like a meteor. But he's got to do it. He's got to show up at camp and he's got to look like his old self. It's been he's never averaged even 12 PPR points per game.
Right. So his old self, we got a little bit of a glimpse of it just off the top of my head. His rookie year, he was splitting with Melvin Gordon, right? And then there was the one, was it Gordon?
Yep.
And then there's one game that Gordon missed and Javonte had scored like 20 points or something. He just had an amazing
it was like 33.
Oh, was it? Yeah, he's caught a bunch of passes. It was just fantastic. Second year, he was probably like slightly disappointing, but it was only about a month. And then he had that horrible knee injury. So
10.5 PPR points per game.
Yeah, he left one of those games obviously with an injury, but yeah, all right. So I don't even know that we know what the real Javonte Williams is, I guess is what I'm saying. He had very little opportunity before the knee injury to be a feature back.
I mean, if there's a hope, you hope that he's J.K. Dobbins, right? Guy that was completely forgotten, goes to a new team, coming off an injury, great opportunity, and completely took advantage of it. Clearly had another injury concern as well. Maybe missed 4 games. But I think if you approach it the right way, like, I don't care what the Cowboys say and even what he looks like in the preseason. If you're drafting him in round 5, please do so, because that's a huge, huge waste of a pick. If you're taking him in round 7, maybe round 7, like that to me is okay. But like, no way round 5.
No, but if he is J.K. Dobbins would have been worth a round 5 pick. I think he was RB6.
But he also doesn't have J.K. Dobbins' resume, though. That's a big difference.
No, I mean round 5, but like if Javonte, okay, sorry to belabor the point. To Dave's point of saying, like, if Javonte Williams is back, he's healthy, he's looking good, there's buzz about him, and we go into the season going, well, this is the starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys. I don't know. I mean, is round 5 really crazy? Because round 5 is guys like James Conner, Travion Henderson in our draft.
But you're talking about guys that have established themselves and done something in the league and don't have this ambiguous situation that's still clouding them. I mean, Jaden Blue could easily be the best running back in Dallas. Look, we went into the last season with Rico Dowdle was the lead running back for the Cowboys on paper, and it didn't take him until the middle of the year to show something. Like, This is not the old Dallas Cowboys offensive line. This is a new coach. This is, Dak, 32 years old, coming off of a hamstring injury. Like, there's a lot of flaws here. And I know Dave wasn't saying to take him in round 5. Dave was saying the ADP could be round 5. Like, I don't think anybody's going to advocate for him in round 5, but it's just like, don't do that.
It's all qualified based on if he is the guy and if he looks like Javonte Williams when he came into the league. That's when you would say, okay, now I got to really try hard to get this guy. And yes, I would take James Conner ahead of him, but I don't know. Like, if that guy exists, if that guy shows up in the middle of the preseason and just the headlines are just like, he's amazing, he looks great, everybody's saying so. People that go to Dallas camp in California, they see him and they say he looks like a different dude. People are going to buy into him. And maybe late round 5 is kind of a reach, but people are going to clamor for running backs. We've talked about it already. Like, when you get to round 6, 7 in our drafts now in May, like the running backs that are left, they've all got huge question marks. Javonte's going to fall right in there.
Around 6.
If it's a huge if that he ends up being the guy. What's more likely is that he doesn't get those types of reports. He looks okay. Jaden Blue is going to be a threat. They're going to have a committee. And ultimately what's going to happen is this team's going to pass a ton. And we would laugh at the idea of Javonte Williams in round 7, much less round 5. That's probably what's going to happen.
All right. Moving on. Next news item is about Tennessee. Brian Callahan, their head coach, he said that their rookie offensive tackle, J.C. Latham, was overweight at the end of the year. And so they're moving. I just want to bring this up. They are moving him to right tackle. They are hoping for a much better year from Latham. He played left tackle last year. They signed Dan Moore from Pittsburgh. They're moving Latham to right tackle. And they're also hoping to have L'Jarius Sneed ready for the fall. According to a report, L'Jarius Sneed was their big ticket free agent signing, cornerback from Kansas City. He had almost a relevant year last year because he had so many injuries, and now he seems to have a chronic knee injury. So at his best, L'Jarius Sneed was a lockdown corner, but I don't know if we're going to get that version of him. Dave Burkett of the, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, of the Detroit Free Press, he expects the Lions to throw the ball downfield more this season. Any written content you guys want to promote? What's coming up on the website from you fellas?
So we're in the midst of our player outlooks and getting those all on the site. So when you click on each player page, you can see all the research that we've been doing, and we break this up by division, except for Jacob, who's doing all the rookies. So that's going to be a fun assignment for him. And I'm sure he's enjoying it. And then what we're doing is we're turning that into some stories. So you can just see some of like the highlights of the top players and how that research sort of just can be action items when you're doing your draft. Because a lot of you guys do live drafts and don't have always the opportunity to read all of this stuff. And if you can get ahead of it and you have some of that information at your fingertips beforehand, you'll know, okay, if you're deciding between Javonte Williams and let's say Jalen Warren, or, you know, one of these type of players that, you know, you're going to be in a similar range, you already say, okay, I read about this in June, as opposed to, oh my God, I'm on the clock with 30 seconds left and I got to make a decision. We're trying to make that as easy for you guys as possible.
Right. So that's one thing. Sleepers, breakouts, and busts have been on the site for Jamie and Heath for a week or two now. And so this week I'm going to add mine. And we've started to put together a few fan mock drafts. It's been fun. I think an ADP review of our early fan mock drafts is in order. Let's see how you guys have been drafting in May.
Yeah, all right. I participated in an OnlyFans draft on Friday. It was a lot of fun. And yes, thank you from Mile High Luke. Snead was traded. I said he was a free agent. He was traded to the Tennessee Titans. All right, we're going to start our upside conversation in just a moment. We'll be back after this quick break to talk about upside for Drake London, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill. Who has the most upside? Is this an easy answer? Is it easily Tyreek Hill? We'll talk about it after this.
When you need your sports news all the time,
we've got breaking news to bring to you.
CBS Sports HQ gives you a snapshot of all the sports that matter to you. When you need your sports in a snap, find it on CBS Sports HQ, streaming free anywhere you are.
Oh, tough one for the Panthers last night, guys. We got to rebound. Got to get in that cup final. All right, who is
Listen,
the
that
most?
was you don't want to lose at home, but
yeah,
it was tough. How about your Knicks?
No, we'll talk about it. If there's something to talk about tomorrow, we can address that, but we still have a long way to go. All right, who has the most upside here? Drake London, T. Higgins, Tyreek Hill. Is this an easy one, guys? Is it easily Tyreek Hill?
Yeah, I think so. We've seen it in 2022 and 2023, 20 plus PPR points per game, double-digit targets with Tua Tagovailoa. That's the recipe. I don't know if I'm not drafting it this way. I'm going to take Drake London before Tyreek Hill on draft day, but he's the one that's got the best chance at 20 plus because we've seen it and we know that he could do it again if his wrist is healthy, he's healthy, Tua's healthy, the Dolphins throw the ball more than 3 yards downfield, et cetera, et cetera.
Who has the second most upside, London or Higgins behind Tyreek Hill?
Higgins.
I mean, I'll make the case for London, but I think it's close.
Yeah, I'm drafting London first, but again, we're talking upside. Like Jamar Chase gets hurt.
Oh no, let's do a non-injury upside.
Oh, non-injuries.
Uh-huh.
I still think Higgins. I mean, he showed you that in that 3 touchdown game, right? He has the best quarterback of these guys. So with a defense that probably is going to stink again, and if he stays his health, because that's been an issue for him, I think it's a little bit better than Drake London's upside.
I mean, he scored 2 more PPR points per game than London last year. So we saw it last year that Higgins hit his upside. He did it on 9.1 targets per game. He scored a ton of touchdowns.
Yeah.
If we can bank on him doing that again, then maybe the right move is to get T. Higgins, because you're right about the quarterback. You're right about the offense. But I worry about what T. Higgins is, injuries aside, if he doesn't get massive touchdown production. And Drake London could always get massive touchdown production if Penix is that dude.
So let me give you their 17-game paces. For Higgins, it was 103 catches. For London, if you remove week 9, he had 19% of the snaps, played 19% of the snaps. So we're going to look at Higgins' 17-game pace. He played 12 games. We're going to look at London's. I honestly don't remember. I don't think so, but maybe. For London, we're going to look at his 17-game pace, just removing week 9. So for Higgins, it's 103 catches. For London, it's 104 catches. For Higgins, it's 1,291 yards. For Higgins, 1,291 yards. I don't know what I said. For London, 30 more yards, 1,321. We are almost identical in catches and yards. Targets, 166 for London, 154 for Higgins. Touchdowns, 14 for Higgins, 9 for London. That was their 17-game pace. So if you think touchdowns are unpredictable, now obviously you think Joe Burrow is going to throw a lot more touchdowns than Penix, but I'll give you one reason to believe in London's touchdowns going up. Actually, 9 is a lot, by the way. The Falcons were 31st in green zone pass attempts. Only the Saints had fewer pass attempts from the 10-yard line or closer. They had the lowest pass rate in football. The Falcons had a lower pass rate inside the 10-yard line than the Eagles, than every team in football. So London was a guy who had the highest percentage of his team's targets from that distance, but they barely threw it from near the end zone. So that's an upside case for London. And Higgins obviously had never done anything like what we saw last year, for what that's worth. And he's been with Joe Burrow for his whole career. That's a tough one, though. But you rank London higher than Higgins. Upside, I think, is debatable, but it seems like you think Higgins has a little more upside.
Well, I know you don't want to discuss health, but I think it applies for both these guys, because you saw the one game that Penix played with London without Mooney in week 18, and he was an absolute monster with 40 PPR points. And Higgins, I don't think I've seen a significant stretch of him, maybe even ever, of no Jamar Chase and Higgins with a healthy Joe Burrow, because Burrow's been so banged up. So
we have Jamie actually
with Burrow at 100%.
I mean, 100%. I don't know, but it's been pretty good. It's been
when Chase had the hip injury.
Yeah. I can look it up for you because I just remember giving this stat going into last year. Let's see.
I got it if you
don't. Is he good with Jamar Chase? Oh, 4 games in 2022 without Jamar Chase. 13.9, 13.0, 23.8, 24.4. 8 or more targets and 3. He's very good. I mean, like top, 18 point potential without question.
Right. So, okay. So I think it's fair both ways, because if they lose their running mate, things clearly improve. I would still probably lean toward Higgins improving a little bit better than Mooney, because that was a week 18 game that really didn't matter. In any event, I just look at it this way. Like, if you say everything is perfect for these guys, Higgins' upside is a little bit better. And I think you illustrated it perfectly. Like, it's so minimal that it's really not worth the debate. So if you're going to take the floor, to me, the floor is safer for London.
Sure. All right. And I'm going to say that Tyreek Hill is he's the most interesting player in fantasy this year. I don't know that you can find a guy that can be the number. Well, not as late. He's not. McCaffrey's going to go a round and a half before Hill. I don't know when Hill's going to go. I know where he goes in our drafts. He might be a mid-round 2 pick in ADP. I don't know how people are going to feel about him, but
would you like to know how they feel about him through 4 mocks?
Yeah, I would.
I mean, that's the whole reason why we're doing the fan mock, right?
The OnlyFans mock, yeah, for sure.
He's a round 4 pick.
Round 4,
38.5.
Yeah, there's no chance that happens.
The highest he's gone is 24th overall.
2 straight seasons with 1,700 or more yards. He almost had 1,800 yards in 2023, I think. Unbelievable. I mean, all right, we could spend a whole show on him. Let's go to our next one here. Top 3, or these 3 players who has the most upside: James Cook, Chase Brown, Joe Mixon. James Cook, Chase Brown, Joe Mixon, all of them drafted in round 3 of our most recent mock draft, the CBS mock draft, not the one with the fans. Who has the most upside, Jamie?
Chase Brown.
Dave?
It's close between Brown and Mixon, but I think the case is a little bit easier to make for Brown than Mixon.
All right, so you guys are saying Chase Brown. Is he your favorite in that group?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yo, I feel like Mixon might be just a little underrated. He's going kind of late in round 3 in most of our drafts. He played 18% of the snaps in week 18. So if you take that out, you're looking at his pace was 314 carries, 46 catches, and basically 1,700 total yards and 15 touchdowns. Joe Mixon was a freaking beast last year. So why do you think Chase Brown has the most upside?
I mean, for me, it's age. It's, offensive line. I hope it didn't take a step back for the Texans, but it's hard not to say that it did when they lose their best offensive lineman still in his prime.
Mm-hmm.
And I think from what we saw from Chase Brown in the second half of the season, really the, beginning part of the first half or ending part of the first half of the season, but really the majority of the stretch run is hopefully going to carry over to this year. And so again, it's like the Higgins versus London conversation in terms of upside, because I think it's going to be relatively close, but I think Chase Brown is on the ascension, and Joe Mixon, I think, takes a little bit of a step back.
Easy to think that just because of age. Jamie mentioned it from week 6 on. Chase Brown had 18 PPR points per game. He played 80% of the snaps in a huge chunk of those games. I am hoping that he continues to play 80% of the snaps this year. I don't know if Zach Moss and Samaje Perine are going to just take a lot of work away from him. I'd be shocked.
And Taj Boyd.
Taj Brooks.
Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, if they do, I'd be surprised if they try and narrow it down to like 65%. And that would open the door for Mixon, if he stays healthy, to do better on a per game basis than Brown. But I'm going to bank on offense here. I'm going to bank on what we saw from Brown last year. I think he's got the most upside. I think he's a sneaky candidate to get to 20 PPR points too.
Who do you think has more? Because I think these guys could have similar ADPs, although personally, I suspect Tyreek Hill will have a round 2 ADP when it's all said and done. But as of now, I see them going similarly. Who do you think has more league-winning potential, Chase Brown or Tyreek Hill?
If we're just talking about potential, it's Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, but it's close.
All right, so you said Chase Brown was regularly playing more than 80% of the snaps down the stretch. James Cook has played more than 2/3 of the snaps one time in his entire career. He's never played more than 75% of the snaps. Last year, I don't think he ever played more than 62% of the snaps. That was week 1, and he never reached that height again. Is there any case that James Cook has more upside than Joe Mixon and Chase Brown?
It's hard to expect more touchdowns for him this year. So, that might have been what we see, maybe the best of his career. But I hope he can come close to it and maybe match it. But you know what Josh Allen does when they get down there, and that's not going to change, I don't think, dramatically. I think they'll give Ray Davis a little bit more work. Ty Johnson's back, so he'll have a little bit of a role in the passing game as well. So he doesn't catch the ball to the same level as I think either of these two guys right now. He could, but I just don't think he will. And those things are just hard to replicate. Then you have the contract situation that's hanging over, all of us right now, specifically him and the Bills. And so we have to see how this, plays itself out. There's going to be a lot of interesting contract discussions over the next few months, I think, with guys that are either going to be, in the case of Cook, probably a training camp headache. Terry McLaurin skipped the Commanders OTAs, so we'll see if there's, an issue at play there. There's going to be a few of these. So Cook, while now being drafted, still in the range of these guys, I think he's going to be the one that slips the most.
All right. We got this. I'm going to throw this up here, Thomas. James Cook. Oh, let me zoom in, huh? That help? Zoom. Where are you, Zoom?
Why don't you check your notifications every now and then?
What do you mean? Oh, James Cook is only the second running back in the last 8 seasons to lead the position in rushing touchdowns and finish lower than RB5 per game in PPR. Cook was RB11 per game. The only other running back that's done that in the last 8 years, lead the position in rushing touchdowns and not be a top 5 running back per game, was Jamal Williams in 2022. And it's just crazy to think that James Cook scored 18 total touchdowns and was RB11 per game. Kind of weird.
That was more than Gibbs?
No, he was tied, I think, with Gibbs and Henry as the most rushing touchdowns. 16 rushing touchdowns, 18 total touchdowns. All right, next group. Who has the most upside between these wide receivers that you're going to start seeing go toward the 3-4 turn in the 12-team league? Marvin Harrison Jr., Terry McLaurin, Garrett Wilson.
I'll say Garrett Wilson, nervously.
I would agree.
Marvin Harrison Jr., Terry McLaurin, Garrett Wilson. I'm surprised you guys are saying Garrett Wilson. I think I would have said Harrison there. Why you say Garrett Wilson?
Well, let's just talent-wise, he's the best of the three. It's based on target volume.
Wait a second. Wait, Garrett Wilson, talent-wise, is the best of the three?
I think he's the best of the three than McLaurin and Harrison. There's nothing that you can say about Marvin Harrison that would suggest that he's better talent-wise than Garrett Wilson.
Nothing
after what we just saw last year, zero.
Yeah. Okay, I'm not like this is a devil's advocate argument. Like Marvin Harrison was the number 4 pick in the draft. He was the best wide receiver prospect in season, but Garrett Wilson, he's had a stat
for much of the year.
He's had a stat on Garrett Wilson about his yards per target, basically, because he's had 3 seasons of 140 or more targets.
Yeah.
And he hasn't turned it into really anything. I mean, he's never been a top 24 wide receiver. Right? Am I right about that? I'm pretty sure I'm right about that.
Sure, but how many times was McLaurin a top 24 receiver before he scored 13 touchdowns last year?
Per game, 0 times.
Right. And Marvin Harrison, he's got 1 year in the league. We know that he's put on muscle this offseason. I don't think he's doing that to get faster. I think he's doing that to win more contested catches and to break more tackles. And those are things that are going to help him be a better fantasy receiver. I just don't think he's got that same type of upside that Garrett Wilson does. He's going back to being the number 1 target getter in the Jets offense. I do think the Jets are going to run a lot. I don't think this offense is going to be particularly awesome, but he's got familiarity with Justin Fields. I went back and I looked at this, like Fields' catchable target rate to his receivers, like the big time receivers, was pretty high. Bickens last year, pretty high. DJ Moore 2 years ago, really high. And so if Garrett Wilson can put it all together, and he can be a very good yak receiver, we're talking about a guy who can outperform both McLaurin and Marvin Harrison, especially in non-PPR, but definitely in half and full too.
So I don't really care all that much about these rate stats that I throw out, like maybe yards per route run, but I do think it's important to illustrate. This is amazing. I didn't know this until just now. I was wrong about Garrett Wilson, by the way. He was wide receiver 19 per game last year in PPR, 25th in non-PPR. Garrett Wilson averaged 7.2 yards per target last year. His career high is 7.5 yards per target. Marvin Harrison Jr. averaged 7.6 yards per target last year as a rookie. So it's better than anything, slightly better than anything we've seen from Garrett Wilson. I do think Garrett Wilson is better than his numbers, but it is worth pointing out in 3 seasons, his numbers kind of suck. His yards per target is really, really bad for the amount of targets he's gotten. Bad for a guy who was a first-round pick that we have high expectations for. He makes very few explosive plays thus far in his career. I think it's quarterback related, but I do want to point that out, that he's been a very underwhelming player statistically, Garrett Wilson, so far.
And it's all true. I mean, I think that the things that you have to hope for here are, you said a lot of it is quarterback related, and that still may be the case this year if he struggles, because Justin Fields, in the small sample size that we have of him with what would you say? He's played with 2 receivers that are close to top tier. I don't know if they're even in the top tier yet. DJ Moore has kind of hovered around that range, and George Pickens, I don't think is, worth putting in that, tier yet. So the one full season he had with DJ Moore was pretty special. Now you could say, the couple of games that he missed there, and, how much is that offense and how it relates to Justin Fields going to carry over to this offense. To Dave's point, they're probably going to run a lot. But you look at the competition for targets. This is what separates it for me, is McLaurin got some additional players to have to deal with. One specifically in Deebo Samuel, if he's healthy, is going to take targets away by comparison more so than the other guys did in Washington last year. And Marvin Harrison still has to contend with Trey McBride, who's going to still most likely, in my opinion, be the number 1 target getter for the Cardinals. So Wilson had 190 targets last year? Something insane like that?
Oh, no. Wilson, no. He had 154. I think he was on pace.
He was on pace for like 190. Right?
He was on pace for 190. He was on pace for 190 before Devontae Adams.
For the Adams.
Yeah.
So I would think that the targets, even in a run-centric offense, are still going to favor Garrett Wilson in this case. And I would think personally that Justin Fields will do enough for him similar to what he was doing with Rodgers before Adams last year, similar to what we've seen from him, at least in his rookie campaign when he had the terrible quarterback situation. It was like 4 or 5 guys there for the Jets. That this could be his best situation, factoring in that 6-game stretch that he had with Rodgers last year. So it's a great conversation with all these guys because McLaurin's got the best quarterback and looked finally like the guy we've been waiting for all season, all his career last year. And Harrison, I still think has plenty of upside, but to me, it's Wilson by just a smidge.
Okay.
And remember what you said to start the conversation, Adam.
Mhm.
These are receivers that are going where?
3-4 turnish.
Right. So we're not talking about any one of these guys being drafted as like a top 15 receiver. We've made that mistake with Wilson and Harrison very recently. This is more about you're shopping for a wide receiver 2. You've already made at least a couple of picks. And these are the names that you're going to be looking at. And you're going to think about which one is going to be able to over deliver based on value. And I think the guy that's going to hog targets and still has a chance to make a lot of plays after the catch is the one that you turn to. And it's close between McLaurin and Wilson when you think about it that way. But McLaurin, I don't want to buy into like crazy touchdown production again. A, because of Debo being there, but B, because it's the only time he's done it. And it was like a third of his percentage of fantasy points last year came on touchdowns. His catches and yardage weren't that far off from what he'd been doing over the course of his career.
No, yeah, it was mostly touchdowns. Heath had this tweet that Garrett Wilson and Deontay Johnson are the only 2 receivers who have seen at least 400 targets in their first 3 seasons and averaged less than 7 yards per target. And that's per stat head. All right, so we got to take a break. But before we do that, Thomas, up to you. If you want to come on, you actually picked Marvin Harrison Jr. in our most recent draft before Garrett Wilson and Terry McLaurin. So you had the first pick of round 4, 37th overall. You took Marvin Harrison Jr. You could have taken McLaurin or Garrett Wilson or DJ Moore, DK Metcalf for what it's worth. Why did you go with Harrison?
I've been burned by Garrett Wilson the last 2 years. So I figure I'm buying low with Marvin Harrison Jr. Everybody had him. Well, at least we did. We had him as a late round 1 pick last year. So I feel like that's good value if he's actually what his draft capital was. So that's why I went with that. But it was between Harrison and Garrett Wilson.
Who do you think went first in who's first in our ADP of the fan mocks?
McLaurin.
Yeah, if Tyreek Hill's going around 4, I'd say McLaurin.
I'll tell you after the break.
Okay. Well, I love it, Dave. All right, we'll be right back after this.
The crowd loves champions. Gladiator 2 is an epic spectacle. To amuse you is my only wish.
The glory is yours, not mine.
Very good. Gladiator 2, rated R. Now streaming on Paramount+.
All right. Oh, Dave, what's the answer?
It is Adam Azer forearms close between Garrett Wilson and Marvin Harrison Jr. Garrett Wilson, 37.8 is his ADP. Marvin Harrison Jr., 38.0. And then Terry McLaurin's at 40.5. So they're all in that same range of early round 4. And it's kind of pick your favorite flavor. The other thing I'll add is that I think anything can come out about Garrett Wilson this preseason that will not make his value go up. There could be stuff about Marvin Harrison that comes out from Cardinals camp that could get people excited.
Yeah, right. So we're talking about ADP there, but we have to obviously not fall into the trap of getting too excited.
Sure.
From
and when I talk about things like that we hear from camp, I'm not talking about coach speak as much as I am like reporters saying, wow, this guy actually looks a lot different.
Sure. All right, let's talk about some running backs and who has the most upside in this trio of running backs. Alvin Kamara, kind of an easy, similar to Tyreek Hill, I suppose, right? I mean, he's shown it very recently. He showed it last year in PPR.
He didn't suck last year.
Yeah. Alvin Kamara, Omarion Hampton, and James Conner. Who has the most upside? Alvin Kamara, Chargers rookie running back Omarion Hampton, or 30-year-old James Conner?
Kamara.
Yep.
Kamara and PPR.
See, Kamara is going to be 30 in July. So 2 30-year-olds and a rookie. And we're going with Alvin Kamara with the most upside here. What if I change it to half PPR? Who has the most upside?
Still Kamara.
I think so.
Okay. James Conner left, I think, 2 games with an injury, played less than 30% of the snaps in weeks 6 and 17. If you look at his healthy games, sorry, I keep doing that today, you're talking about an easy top 12 running back last year, James Conner, maybe closer to like RB 10 per game, and on pace for, in his healthy games, James Conner was on pace for 1,765 total yards, 50 catches, and 11 total touchdowns. And he was amazing in the fantasy playoffs, scored 22.2 or more PPR fantasy points in all 3 games. So James Conner really hasn't slowed down. But Kamara, of course, what was he? RB was Kamara last year. It was RB 5 per game in full PPR. Do you still see the same upside for Kamara, or is it worse because of the situation, the quarterback situation?
I think it's slightly worse. We didn't have a lot of Derek Carr for stretches of last season, so you got to keep that in mind. And I think the coaching is going to be better, with Kellen Moore as the play caller. So I think that's a plus for Kamara. But you look again at what this team is around him. He's still their best player. We're waiting for Chris Olave. Rashid Shaheed, I don't think is going to be their best playmaker. And you have quarterback situation that's clearly going to be troubling. So if you're just looking at a team and environment, he's in the worst situation of these guys. But that really hasn't mattered for him. I mean, you just gave the stat last year in terms of their green zone, production, and he still was very good in his role, which I don't think is going to change. Like, you pencil him in for 60 plus catches if he's healthy for 13 plus games. He's done, that basically his entire career. And so he's got 80 catch potential. And I think whether it's Spencer Rattler, who apparently looked good, or Tyler Shuck, who's probably going to be the starter for the majority of the games, at least I would hope, if this is the group they're going with, then they're going to rely on him so much, and if he can somehow find his way to 8+ touchdowns, then he's got a chance to really shatter what is probably going to be a reasonable ADP for him. I don't want to say it's going to be great value because he's still going to be a top 4 round pick, but if he can get to 13 plus games like he played last year, we had played 14 games last year, missed the final 3, so he wasn't there for you in the fantasy playoffs. Age is obviously a concern because he's 30. Situation's awful, but again, those catches count. And in this format, he's still going to be better than these 2 guys. He may have more catches than these 2 combined.
It's funny, yeah. All right.
Are you interested in the track record of running backs with Kellen Moore?
Sure.
Well, you know what Saquon did last year, and I think he's an outlier, 23.6 PPR points per game. The year before was Eckler, 5.3 targets per game, 16.4 PPR points per game. 2022, Dallas, Zeke was at 16.5. He barely had any targets. Pollard was there too. He averaged 14.5. Pollard averaged 3.4 targets per game. There were definitely some weeks where Zeke was out and Pollard played more, and vice versa. The 3 seasons averaged at least 16.7 PPR points per game. Bottom line is we're seeing a lot of good numbers for running backs under Kellen Moore, both in terms of PPR points per game and targets per game. And I think that that's absolutely going to continue on with Kamara. Plus, if they stink, like he's going to go to check down city all the time. And that's just going to boost his number in full PPR. It's easier to bet on that older running back compared to Connor. And I took a look at this morning, Adam, and I shared it with you. Can you name the last running back who was a rookie who averaged 15 points per game with Greg Roman or Jim Harbaugh?
Oh, I mean, that's kind of tough, but Frank
It's
Gore?
tough 'cause it's never happened.
Yeah.
And no rookie running back has even had 12 points per game with Harbaugh and Roman. Now, they've never had a first-round running back like Hampton.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that a rookie wide receiver had. In fact, I almost guarantee you a rookie wide receiver had never done as well as Ladd McConkey under Greg Harbaugh.
Yeah, that's entirely possible too.
Yeah. I mean,
But
maybe Sammy Watkins. I mean, I think Sammy Watkins.
Pause for a second on Hampton, because if they're going to treat him with kid gloves or bring him along slowly, and they absolutely can do that. They've got Najee already on the team. They might have Dobbins too. That would make me just a little bit worried about Hampton getting off to a great start to begin the year. And it certainly would worry me about Hampton having a rookie of the year type season where he's getting 18 PPR points per game, something sick like that.
I mean, going into last year, Greg Roman had been an offensive coordinator for 10 seasons, and he had produced one top 12 wide receiver on a per game basis, and it was Sammy Watkins. And then McConkey, I think he just missed. He was, he was 20th on a per game basis. So I guess this doesn't really help me. He had a really good year though, 14.9 PPR fantasy points.
He had a great second half of the year.
Yeah,
his first half wasn't so good.
Yeah,
something like that could happen to Hampton.
All right, next up, let's get some quarterbacks in. Who has the most upside? Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, or Dak Prescott? We talked about last week, but this is where Dak has finished in the last 6 seasons on a per-game basis. In 6-point per passing touchdown leagues, Dak has been on a per-game basis again. QB 4, 4, 7, 9, 2, and 21 last year. So who has the most upside? Bo Nix, Caleb Williams, or Dak Prescott? Jamie?
It's so tough. These are actually back-to-back in my rankings. I just moved Nix ahead of Prescott, so I'm going to say Nix, but this is 7, 8, 9 for me, and just love the potential for all three of these guys. I mean, Williams, if he hits, could be an absolute monster based on everything that's going on around him. Nix gave you such a good glimpse of what he could be, and, adding another weapon plus another year, in Sean Payton's system, which is the biggest part of this, is his coach. And you mentioned Dak's track record. The fact that he's 32 and coming off a pretty significant injury is a little troubling, but got a pretty nice weapon this offseason as well, with a terrible run game most likely around him. So I lean Nix slightly, but again, they're all in a very similar range for me.
Yeah.
I'll say Dak.
You'll say Dak. I just want to give you a stat on Bo Nix real quick. Got off to a slow start. His last 13 games, though, he was actually the number 5 quarterback per game. Bo Nix, insane.
He was awesome. Do you think he runs as much?
The pace in that stretch was 418 rushing yards. I don't think he'll get quite there, but that's not outlandish, right? I mean, it's not,
It's in his profile.
No question. But I wonder if, Dallas didn't have a run game last year. So I think Nix kind of picked up the slack a little bit there.
Denver.
If Harvey, that's what I meant. Sorry. If Harvey ends up being really good, then I think that could obviously take both pass attempts and rush attempts away from Bo Nix. I've got Nix ranked the highest of the 3. I'm taking him before Dak Prescott because I know what the floor is for Dak Prescott. And we might have seen it last year. And sorry, Cowboys fans, we might see it again this year. But the track record before last year was awesome. Adam, you lay it out perfectly every time. The run game, humongous question mark. The defense, there are a lot of defenders on that Dallas team coming back from injury. We do not know when they'll be back or how good they'll be. And he's got a great trio in Lamb, Pickens, and Ferguson. I think he's going to be a busy dude. I think Dak Prescott, if he stays healthy, is going to throw a lot. And I think he can get close to that 24-point per game mark. And I think Nix in his second season could see a step back. We see that from quarterbacks a lot.
I was thinking about this with Dak Prescott, for a guy who has been a top 4 quarterback per game and top 3 of the last 6 seasons and top 7 per game or 8 per game, whatever it was, in 5 of the last 6 seasons. Now, I don't think the general football fan thinks about fantasy finish, but obviously fantasy finish equates to success. Mm-hmm. He's never regarded as that kind of a quarterback, It's like, how did he do it? It's not like he runs that much. How Dak Prescott's had kind of an underrated career, but I never really think of him as like an upper echelon quarterback, even though he's been unbelievable for fantasy. Just a thought of mine.
He'll go down in history as one of those players that was better for fantasy than for reality.
Well, it's almost like the guy that preceded him. Same thing.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like Romo got a little bit more respect than Dak. Maybe his teams were better. Dak's teams have been pretty good too. Yeah.
I think unfortunately for Dak, he's kind of living off of the Romo regime. The fact that they haven't had playoff success has carried over to Dak as well. And it's just kind of like they're stuck in this purgatory of, having some of these great regular seasons and then never being able to finish it. And they watch the Giants win 2 Super Bowls and the Eagles make it to 1 win 2, and make it to 3. And, it's got to be frustrating for Cowboys fans. The thing about Dak is, like, If he stays healthy, I think you pencil him in for a top 10 season, just based on how he's performed and what he's looking at. The concern would be is that, his age and the injury that he's coming off of, and maybe some of these younger quarterbacks, are better, or some of the running quarterbacks, like Fields and maybe Kyler and potentially even Anthony Richardson. These guys seem like they have more upside than Dak. But again, you look at what he's done.
Right.
And, you even go back to the 2023 season when it was really him just relying on one guy, and one guy having that monster campaign in CeeDee Lamb. And now he's got two really good wide receivers. One's proven and elite, and one could get to a higher level if his head's on right and getting the opportunities and targets, as we saw even last year with Russell Wilson. George Pickens was really good during those first 6 games. So there's a lot to like about Dak Prescott's scenario, which is why I think he should be drafted as a number 1 quarterback. But I think the one thing with this position in particular, to go back to your question to start the show, this is the easiest position to shoot for upside. So when you look at the top 6 guys, we'll throw Mahomes still in that group, so Lamar, Josh Allen, Daniels, Hurts, Burrow, Mahomes, whatever order you have them in. I think those 6 are going to be the first 6 quarterbacks. Then I think it comes down to, like, what are you looking for in terms of who can hit to the highest level? So the next group, again, whatever order, it's these 3 guys. It's Baker, it's Kyler, it's Fields, it's I think you throw Richardson in there, you throw Drake May in there, you throw Trevor Lawrence in there. There's a lot of ways you can go with this. I'm sure I'm missing a guy or two. And if you miss on them, then you have guys that are still really good, but they just may not have the same upside. And Jared Goff and Brock Purdy and Tua and guys that have, hit to 19, 20, 21, 22 points, that may not have that extra gear. And they might, they might get there. Goff could easily go to 25. Tua can easily get to a 25 point per game season. But they're just such easy fallback options that you can pair one of these high upside players. I mean, Caleb Williams was awful last year. And we're all, I don't want to say everybody, but, the industry for the most part is, breakout quarterback. He falls in that category, in that bucket. And it's understandable why. But it's easy just to take swings at this position and then still get a good second quarterback, and you're fine.
So Dave said Dak Prescott. So it was Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, Dak Prescott. Dave said Dak. Sorry, I'm Jamie. Who did you say?
Nix.
Okay. I think I'd probably go Caleb.
Yeah. And again, make strong cases for all 3.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our last one here. This one, man, I pull my hair out. I just have no idea. 3 wide receivers, DK Metcalf, Courtland Sutton, and Xavier Worthy. Who has the most upside? DK Metcalf, Courtland Sutton, Xavier Worthy. They all went around the 4-5 turn in our most recent draft. So again, it's Metcalf, Sutton, Worthy. Dave, who has the most upside?
Xavier Worthy has the most upside. He's the most explosive of the 3. He's got the best quarterback of the 3. He's on a team that wants to be more explosive. He's shown us what he can do when he is explosive. That was over a 6-game stretch toward the end of the year. And he's got the best shot of any of these 3 to finish as a top 10 fantasy receiver.
Okay,
Xavier Worthy over Metcalf and Sutton. Jamie, how about you?
Well, I agree wholeheartedly. I think everything Dave said is 100% accurate. And again, I know we're not factoring an injury here, but we do have his running mate coming off of a pretty significant injury. And so if Rashee Rice is not ready to go week 1, you saw what Worthy was to finish the season, Super Bowl included, which, a lot of people will say, okay, he had a couple of his big plays against backups. I don't care. He still looked the part. He could easily be, the best receiver for the Chiefs right now. And I think Sutton has hit his ceiling the last 2 years, which is pretty good. And I think he can do it again. And Metcalf, look, we don't know what the quarterback situation is going to be for the Steelers. We have an idea of what we think is going to happen, but he could be awful.
Give him Aaron Rodgers for the sake of this argument.
Yeah, but it's still a 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, and that was good at times for his number 1 receiver last year. But is it going to be Garrett Wilson good, or is it going to be Devontae Adams good?
No, it would be. So that's a tough thing, because I see more upside for Metcalf than I think you guys do, because Aaron Rodgers fixates on his number 1 receiver.
Yeah.
But the problem is the Jets were one of the most pass-heavy teams in football last year. So when you look at you look at Garrett Wilson on pace for 190 targets in 6 games before the Adams trade. You look at Adams on pace for this is amazing. Adams on pace for 176 targets in 11 games with Aaron Rodgers. And that was with Rodgers throwing a lot, but not a ton, like 33.4 pass attempts per game. That's amazing with Garrett Wilson on the field. Now, I don't think Rodgers will throw 33.4 passes per game with Arthur Smith if he is on the Steelers, right? But I still think like there's 145, 150 target potential for DK Metcalf if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. Maybe people think I'm too high. I don't know, but I don't think Xavier Worthy has that target potential. If Rashee Rice is playing a full season, and Sutton I do think has that, but that would be the very high end of it. Sutton, last 10 games for Sutton, he was the number 10 wide receiver per game and on pace for 150 targets. So that's what you got to hope for there. But I don't know. I just look at the way he peppers these guys with targets, Aaron Rodgers, and Metcalf is the only guy that would justify that. He stands alone in that receiving core. So I see a little more upside, I think, than most people do there, but I do think Worthy's the answer here. I agree with you guys. He's just
I have Sutton ranked the highest of this trio, but I would go upside as Worthy 1, Metcalf 2, and those guys are close, and Sutton 3rd, because I do think that Sutton's ceiling has, again, somewhat been reached. But you are talking about a 9 touchdown average in 2 years with Sean Payton, and that's hard to overlook. And, Payton's track record with his number 1 receiver is pretty good as well, so even with the addition of Evan Ingram, I think Sutton's still going to get peppered with targets. I think this is a great trio to discuss here, because again, if Metcalf does get the Rodgers treatment, then he could be fantastic. And he's never really been in that situation because he's always had somebody to sort of, be a little bit of an anchor on the other side. He doesn't have that right now. I don't think they're done with their receiving core. I think we're going to see, somebody else added in some capacity, because they've been trying for the last couple of years. They landed their guy in Metcalf. I think the Pickens trade was opening the door to maybe bring in somebody else. You've heard some, Keenan Allen is waiting for Rodgers to maybe sign there to potentially join the Steelers. So we'll see. But I do think that there's a lot to love about Metcalf's situation, clearly.
Would you like to know what the fans' ADP is on those 3 receivers?
I would love it.
And I will tell you after the break.
We've already done our breaks.
And we're back.
We're back, yeah.
DK Metcalf leads very slim over Xavier Worthy. 51.3 for Metcalf, 51.5 for Worthy. How about Courtland Sutton at 59.8?
Wow, I love that.
Yeah, he's behind Travis Hunter. He's behind Devontae Smith. He's behind DJ Moore. I kind of get that with DJ Moore. But Sutton, I get that Denver added Evan Ingram and RJ Harvey, and those guys could impact Sutton to a degree. Pat Bryant's there. Maybe he does too. But I think Sutton is one of those safer, low-end wide receiver 2s that you can draft. And this is about the range he should go in.
Jamie, I have a question. You said Keenan Allen might sign with the Steelers if Aaron Rodgers goes there?
Heard that, yeah.
What are they going to play? Shuffleboard? All right, so...
I like how while Dave was talking, you were going to figure out your board to get your joke all set up.
100%.
Can you do me a favor before the show's over?
It's over. What's up?
Can you go to Twitter, X, and just click on your notifications? And I want to see what the last... Just read 5 of them. I want to see what you're missing.
This is
something's waiting for you.
Is something waiting for me?
I don't know why Jamie would bring it up otherwise.
Well, I just don't. This is weird to me that you don't read your notifications.
I read them, but okay. So I did some. All right, you want to see? We can share. We can share the screen.
Well, I mean, you might be, getting called.
He's got to save something to read later.
I did some. You mentioned the player outlook, so I was doing my AFC East research, and I was doing some Jonnu Smith research, and looking at tight ends who've had a breakout this late in their career. For Jonnu Smith, it was his 8th year. So one of the guys, I just think we should marvel at the season that Gary Barnidge had. I call it one of the most randomly great seasons I can think of. 1,043 yards, 9 touchdowns, 79 catches for Gary Barnidge at age 30. And he had never had more than 242 yards in any previous season. The next year, Gary Barnidge was drafted as tight end 9, and he finished as tight end 28 per game. So I just have some comments about tight ends. Heath Miller was a guy who had a late breakout. Dave Richard, who knew you rolled so hard? I don't know. This is part of Dave's. Let's see. Oh, Dave's talking Las Vegas. Got in my mentions there. Yeah, so just like some tight end. People talking to me about Gary Barnidge. One person said, he said, oh yeah, I don't remember Gary Barnidge. Had to write his name down to make sure I spelled it right. I refuse to Google. If what you're saying is true, then I forgot a year of football. Like, that was
Wait a minute, you read these already?
I did read them. I don't know why it said I had 20 notifications. I read these.
No, it said you had 200.
No, it said 20.
No.
Well, I definitely didn't have
200.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, we're gonna get rid of that. And yeah, I've tweeted some good stats lately. I have not gained a Twitter follower in like 8 years. I've been stuck at wherever I'm at right now for a long time. So it's a little bit of an ego bruise for me. If you want to follow me at Adam Azer. Yes.
When Nando bought you Twitter followers.
I remember briefly had like 200,000 followers because Nando bought me them, but those days were gone. At Adam Azer, AIZER, at Dave Richard, at Jamie Eisenberg.
Okay, I tell you a quick Nando story.
Yeah, sure.
You want to get one? So Dave and I had to do a conference call with something in house, and Dave was on camera and I was not, and it was involving something that Nando was associated with. So I was texting Nando and Dave at the same time, and Dave was reading his phone, and he was getting a little upset about something. So I said to Nando, I go, let's just start saying things to make Dave laugh. So you can only imagine what came out of Nando's mouth.
Oh, I need a screenshot. I really need a screenshot, like very bad.
I think one exists.
That's great. Oh, Tank the Chai guy. Wait, how did we say Chai, Dave? Or Shy?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Tank the Chicago guy just followed me. Thank you, Tank. All right, go Bears. We'll talk to y'all tomorrow. I'm gonna read some emails. We're gonna do fewer. We're gonna do like safest floor. I think tomorrow we'll do fewer groups because I want to read some emails. We're long overdue to read some emails. We'll do that tomorrow. Have a great day. See you, everybody.